New within the last hour, there is a verdict in the trial of a former Tallahassee youth director accused of molesting a teenage boy. Within the past hour, a jury finding Terrence Booker guilty as charged of sexual battery and lewd and lascivious conduct. Booker is a former youth director at a local church and a former after-school program employee at a local school. Prosecutors tell us the jury deliberated for less than an hour before reaching that guilty verdict. Booker was taken into custody to await sentencing. He's accused of molesting 5 boys over a span of 15 years. This was the first of those cases to go to trial.